Your game needs sprites. Sprites are 2D images that can be static or animated, and they are what you see when you are playing a game. So what we're going to do today is figure out where to get them from, how to import them, and how to animate them in GameMaker. If you're ready, then let's... Alright, so this is what we're going to accomplish today. We're going to have a game, we're going to get our bird inside of it, and we're going to create a simulated gravity system just like this. So to get started, let's take a look at where we can find art. I am not an artist, so I don't like to try to pretend. What I do is I find great art, always free, at least most of the time free. I have paid for some really high quality stuff in the past, but there's a lot of really fantastic places you can find free, high quality art that you can even use in commercial projects, although that's a licensing question. So I'll talk about licensing very, very little here just to give you an overview. But if you want to go more in depth, definitely check that out. So here are some of the best places to get art. OpenGameArt.org. This is more geared towards 2D art, which is great for GameMaker, but it does also have 3D assets. It's got sound and music, and it has everything you need to get going on a game. OpenGameArt is, I think, one of the more popular sites, and it often has a wide variety of art that you can find and grab and download. So right here, if we click on one, this one looks kind of cool. You can preview it by clicking on this. Then, if you want to download it, you come down here. You click on one of these and you press save, or it might have automatically downloaded it already. So this one here specifically, they're all individual, which is a little annoying. Most of the time they come in a zip file if there's a bundle of them. So OpenGameArt is a great place. Now you can see over here that this license is public domain, and if we click on that, it'll actually tell you everything about it. Public domain is the best one because there is no copyright at all. You don't have to tell anybody where you got it from. You don't have to credit the author, and you can use it in any project you want and even make money off of it, which is pretty cool. Creative Commons is the most common one, and that's the one where you just have to give attribution to the author, and then you can use it wherever you want. So both of those are pretty great. itch.io is another fantastic place. So if you go to itch.io and then you go up here to browse and to game assets, or just assets right here, this is where it's going to come up. Now I always click on free, and these are all of the ones that are free for you to download. So there's a lot of them inside of here, a lot of them really high quality stuff. They're fantastic. So you come down, you find what you're looking for, and you click on download now. So it's going to give you an option to donate to the author, which if you've got the money, awesome. Definitely do that if you use their stuff and you like it. If not, you can just click on this button here that says, no thanks, take me to the download. And then it will take you right here. You press download, save it, and you're ready to go. Another great place is Kenny.nl, or if you just search for Kenny free game art, this is what you will come across. So if you come up here to assets, Kenny is a fantastic creator. He has a very distinct art style that pretty much is shared across all of his stuff. So if you don't like one of his art projects here, you're probably not going to like any of them. But if you do like them, or if you just want something you can test out, there are dozens of free options in here. He's got 2D, 3D, audio, and UI. I have used some of these in my own projects. They are just really great. So we click on one that we like, here it is, and then we click on download. So we save it, and you're good to go. Now he is on Itch as well, so you'll find his stuff there. He also posts to OpenGameArt and probably a dozen other websites that I don't even know about. All places that you can grab art from. Then there is a marketplace provided by GameMaker. Now, I would say this marketplace is a little outdated. The UI is a little old. It does get new assets, and it also has things like projects and code and scripts that you can get. A lot of them are paid, and a lot of them I think are a little more expensive than they should be, but that's because it's just not used a lot. But if you want to browse through here, you definitely can, and you can come in here and just search for sprites, change it to price low to high. I think that should bring up free up here first, and then you can kind of go through and explore what you like. There is a lot here, not as much as compared to other websites, but it's a great place to look because it also has other things that those other websites don't have, such as specific projects that you can download, things for rooms and scripts and sequences, things like that. And then craftpix.net is the last one I'll talk about. Now, these ones also have a pretty distinct style. Now, I don't think it's all one artists like Kenny is, but they do all kind of have a fairly similar look. And if you come on here, you want to go to freebies. This is where all the free ones are. They do have a pretty good variety. They've got 2D and 3D inside of here, and they look pretty good. I like them. I've definitely used them in the past for certain projects when I need stuff. And again, you'll find these on the other websites as well. But if you want to go directly to the source, you definitely can. So all that being said, what we need is just a Flappy Bird sprite that we can use. So I'm going to go to Open Game Art, and up at the top right, I'm just going to search for Flappy Bird. And there's a lot of options here. If you grab any of these ones that have like the white grayish background and say Flappy Bird game character, you'll be good to go because they pretty much all have the same animations. They have different lengths, but they are animated and have the different animations that we're going to be using. Now, if you want to follow along exactly, I'm going to grab this one right here, this little Cyclops bird. Then I'm going to click on the file here, click on save, and then we're going to open it up. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring it up here. Now, this comes in as a zipped file. What that means is it is compressed, and we can't actually do anything with it yet until we what's called extract it. We have to open it up and make it available. Now, we can go through and we can actually look at some of these, and like we can click on it and bring it open. But GameMaker, you can't bring these in yet until you extract it. So if we go to downloads, we can actually see that it has a little zip icon right there. So that's indicating that you have to actually extract it. So if you're out here, you can right click, extract all. If you are inside of the folder, you can come up here to compressed folder tools and click extract all. Click extract. And here we go. It looks the same except we don't have this extract option up here anymore. So let's go ahead and open up the GameMaker project. So there are a couple ways to bring sprites into our game. And actually, we're going to make a new Flappy Bird project. We're going to discard this. So we're going to make new blank, GML, project name, Flappy Clone Part 1. And I'm going to call this live because we're doing this live as we go. So here's a blank project. Now there's a couple different ways to bring sprites into it. The first one is you can right click over here, and we're going to do the sprites folder, the sprites group here. And if we right click, create, we can add a sprite. Now we've done this before, voila. So that is the sprite we need. Now we're going to click on import, and we're going to go to downloads, wherever it is. And it's called Free Flappy Monster Sprite Sheets. Now there are two different ones inside of here. There's GIF, which is animated already. But the problem with the animated one is, at least in this specific case, it has a background, which is not what we want. Because if this is the sprite we're using, then the background is actually going to be inside of it. And that's going to look terrible. Now, there are ways to remove backgrounds. So if we came in here and we clicked on the color remove tool, yeah, there are ways to do that. This one doesn't work very well because there's actually white inside of the sprite. We could select it all, but it doesn't necessarily work either. We can try the magic wand and delete, but then we have that like white outline, and it's just going to be a pain to go through and try to make this look good. So no, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of those frames there. Click OK. We're going to go back to import. And instead of the GIF, we're going to go to transparent PNG. We're going to go to flying, and we're going to select all four. So you can press Control A to select them. You can click on one, press Control, 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 click the first one, hold Shift, press the last one, or just box select them. There's a bunch of different ways. But once you have them all, click Open. and it's going to bring them in. And now we have a transparent flying Cyclops thing, and it looks really good. To see it animated, we press this play button. Now, I've upgraded to the most recent version of GameMaker, and it looks like they've changed the default FPS, the animation speed up here. Usually, it's 30. And 30 is way too fast. So up here in the top left, this FPS stands for frames per second. That means how many of these frames do we actually want to play every single second that it is animating? 30 for a 4-frame animation is way too much. So we're going to go to something like 15 and we're going to press play. And that looks pretty good. So we'll actually bump it up. Let's try 18. Yeah. I think 18 looks a little better. This is a personal preference. You can change it as you like, but 18 looks pretty good. Now, we can change the playback mode. So right now it's actually looping, but now it's going ping pong, and then this one is just playing once. So I like to keep it on a loop. If it's a nice animation, it cycles really well and it looks pretty good. We're going to make sure that we want to give it a good name. So we're going to call this SPR. I'm going to call this Cyclops Bird Flying. The reason that's so descriptive is we're going to have a Cyclops bird dead animation as well. And if we had multiple birds that the player could choose from, we'd want to be as specific as possible. That way we know how to find them and write them in code. Now, the second way to bring a sprite in is to actually just drag it from the folder itself. So I'll go to transparent PNG, got hit, and we're only going to select one for now. If we try to bring 2 in, it's actually going to make 2 sprites for us automatically, which is not what we want. So I'm going to grab the first frame and drag it into the sprites folder and let go. Now you can see it has created the sprite. Once we have one here, I'm going to grab the second frame and bring it into here specifically. If we misclick and we actually do it out here, it will create a whole new sprite for us, which isn't what we want. Instead, we want to drag it into this one, and then it actually adds that as a frame. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and delete this frame 2 one. So right click, delete, there we go. So this one, we're going to name, same kind of thing. We're going to call this SPR, Cyclops Bird Dead. So now we've got 2 animations. This one isn't really going to be animated at all. Instead, when we die, we'll play this one as we jump up, and then as we're falling down, we'll change to this one. Otherwise, I think it looks kind of weird. So we're actually going to set this FPS to 0. And now when we press play, nothing happens because it doesn't have a frame per second value greater than 0, so it doesn't play any of them. So that is bringing in sprites and even how to deal with animated sprites. So now let's talk about sprite origin. By default, it's going to bring it in as top left. So over here, we can actually choose the origin. We have an X and a Y, and then we have options for middle, top left, so on and so forth. Mine is coming in as middle center because I've changed a preference, but let's talk about what it is first, and then I'll show you how to change it. So if yours is top left, that's how it normally is. Now, the origin is the X and Y position for a sprite when you attach it to an object. So right now it's just a sprite, it's just a picture, but it's the origin of it is in the top left corner, and we can click on this and drag it around. And this affects things like the X and Y of your object when you move it. So if our origin is way over here on the left, this is the Y position for this object that we would eventually have. So if we were to move this object into our room and we were to say, hey, go to the edge of the room, and the origin was on the left, then let me bring our flying bird in here. I'm going to create an asset layer, which allows you to put sprites in here, and it's going to come in really big. So I'm just going to click up here, and we can scale this down if we click in the corner and drag. So if we moved the X position of our bird all the way over here to the edge of the room, and our origin is on its tail essentially, this would be where it would go. okay, because the X and Y is right here of the origin of this bird. But if we went in and we changed the origin all the way over here to the right-hand side, then you can see the bird actually moved. The bird isn't moving at all. Its X and Y is 1344 and 384. So if we change the origin again, and we come in and we look at this, it has not changed its X and Y value at all. But the object is moving pretty drastically based on the origin that we've given it. If we drag it up to the top, middle, it's going to do the same kind of thing. It's just going to move this around. So the origin that we give our sprite directly affects how we interact and how the bird object is going to move, and where functions that take an X and Y for an object affect it. So come up here and click on middle center. We're going to do middle center for the flying sprite and the dead sprite. Middle center is the recommended option for most of your origins, because when you have a character, especially if that character is going to have multiple animations like going left and right, you need your origin to be right in that center. Otherwise, it's going to look like your character is warping over the room, because when you move to the right and your origin is on the right-hand side or something, it looks fine. But if you move to the left, your character is going to do this whole flip because the origin would be here. So this is the exact same left and right, but it's way not in the center, where it doesn't look good at all. If it was in the center and you flipped it, then it would be like this. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense visually and what we're looking at here. But for right now, middle center will work exactly the way we want. Now, let's go ahead and make an object and simulate some gravity. So I'm going to bump this size up as well because it needs to be a little bigger. Now I'm going to right click and create a new object. We're going to call this OBJ Cyclops. You could call it OBJ Bird, you could call it OBJ Player. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to create that, and then I'm going to drag the bird flying sprite and assign it. If you don't want to drag it on there, you can just click, go into your sprites, and choose whichever one you want right there. Now, we're going to add a couple of events. We're going to add a create event. So this one, we're just going to call initialize variables. And now I'm going to go ahead and bump up the size of this so that we can read it easier. And here are the variables we're going to use. We're going to have a variable called yspeed, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Yspeed is going to control the vertical movement of our bird. It's going to control how fast we move. When we jump, we're going to set that yspeed to a negative value so the bird goes up in our room. But then we're going to have a gravity that is constantly pulling the bird back down. But we don't actually want to just say y and then we actually move the bird based on the gravity. Instead, we want to slowly increase the gravity so the bird falls like this, and as it falls, it goes faster and faster. So we start with a yspeed variable that we're going to actually move the bird around with, but we're going to move it up and down with that. Then we're going to simulate our own gravity with a variable called fall speed, and we're going to set this equal to 0.4. Now, the 0 is not necessary. I'm writing it here simply because putting just a 0.4, it might be a little hard to read, and you might actually put a 4 instead of a 0.4, and you definitely don't want that much of a gravity. Then we're going to say jump height equals -12. So if you recall, inside of our room, the y and x start in the top left corner. If you move to the right, your x increases, and if you move down, your y increases. So if we want to fall, we want a positive value. If we want to jump, we need a negative value. So when the bird is here and we want to jump up, we actually want to subtract y so that we move up. So that's why it's a negative value. Then we're going to actually resize the sprite here. And you saw that the sprite is ginormous. So the reason we're going to resize it here instead of changing the actual size of the sprite in our the sprite editor here, because we could come in here and we could change this to 115. And if we press apply, our sprite has now changed. But the visual quality of our sprite has also changed. Now this looks a lot more like pixel art, whereas this looks like a pretty high quality image. So if you really like pixel art, then you might come in here and change this down. We're going to scale it down to 10% of its original size, which would actually be 115. So if you want to do that, go for it. I like the higher quality looking here. So I'm going to press Control Z and make sure that my origin stays in middle center. So this, it looks really nice in my opinion. And if we change it here in code, we will retain that high quality look, but we'll have it at a much smaller and reasonable size. So to resize it, we're going to use a built-in variable called image X scale and image Y scale. These control the X scale of our image, and we can set them to any value we want. 0.1 will be 10%. So I'll do 0.1 just to make it more legible. And we'll say image Y scale also equals 0.1. If we don't do these the same value, it's going to stretch and distort it one way or the other. So make sure that when you resize it the same amount on both of them. So now if we go ahead and delete this asset layer because we don't need it, I'm going to click on the instances layer. Otherwise, if you don't and try to drag an object in, it's not going to work. So I'm going to click on the instances layer and drag in our bird. Now, it's still huge because we only resize it when the game starts. So if we run this game right now, our bird will get resized in the game. And it looks great. But since we want to be able to place our bird a little bit easier than just guessing where it's going to be at and how it's going to resize itself, I'm going to come in here, double click, and I'm going to say 0.1 and 0.1. That way the bird here is the exact same size as what it will be once we resize it through the code, and now we can move it around and we know exactly where it's actually going to be at. Okay, this is everything we need to do in the create event. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a step event. And here we're going to simulate gravity. So the step event runs 60 times a second, or however many frames you are running every second. By default it's 60, but you can bump it up higher. I wouldn't recommend taking it lower. So the goal of what we are doing here is to make a gravity system. So fall speed is our gravity. And the reason we're not using the keyword gravity is because it's actually a built-in variable already, and we don't want to use it because we want to have our own system and be able to control it exactly how we want. We don't want to have any of that built-in properties. So fall speed is a positive value. So if we say something like y plus equals fall speed, and we run our game right now, our bird will move down at a steady rate of 0.4 forever and ever. And that kind of works, but at the same time, it's not realistic for what we actually want to do. Because in a game, and even in real life, when you jump, you're fighting against gravity. So you're going up really fast, but gravity is still pulling on you. So then you start going up slower, and then eventually you stop going up, and then you start coming down slowly. And then you start coming down quickly. And that's what we want to do. And the best way to do that is like this. So we're going to say y speed. Well, first, we're going to replace this variable here. We're not going to use fall speed. We're going to increase it based on y speed. All of our vertical movement is based on y speed. So that means we need to change our y speed as we're going. So we're going to say y speed plus equals fall speed. Now, y speed starts at 0. The first frame, it will be 0.4 because we've added fall speed to it. The second frame, it's going to be 0.8 because we've compounded those two together. The third frame will be 1.2 and so on and so forth. So this is going to simulate a faster falling gravity the longer we are in the air. So to simulate that, or to show it, I'm going to put the bird up higher, press F5 and run our game. And you can see that we fall slowly at first and then it goes really fast. So if we had even more time, the bird would fall even faster because our y speed becomes a greater and greater number the longer we are falling. So we've got the gravity system in place. Now we want to do a jumping. So we're going to come over here and we're going to go to key pressed and we're going to go to space. So the key press event will trigger one time when the space bar is pressed. Be very careful here. There is a key down and a key up. These three events all work differently. Key up makes a fair bit of sense because it triggers when the key is released. Key pressed triggers when it is pressed one time. Same for key up. Key down, on the other hand, is going to trigger as long as that key is being held down. So for a flappy game, we only want to move up one time when we jump up and we press the space bar. If we held it down, we would instantly go up and we would essentially be flying upwards forever. That's not what we want. Instead, we want to move up one time when we press the space bar. So key pressed is the event we want, and we're going to have it be a space bar press. So we're going to call this jump. Now, we are moving down by changing our y speed slowly over time with our fall speed. To move up, we need to have a negative value, and if we want to jump pretty high, we need to have a fairly large negative value. That's the whole point of our jump height variable right here. So, key press, we're going to set our y speed equal to jump height. That's the reason I did a negative value here. We could have put a positive value for jump height and said y speed equals negative jump height. To me, it just makes a lot more sense to give the variable the right value and just assign it as we do right here. Now, let's check this out in action. So we press F5 to run our game, and if we press space, we now have a jumping, flying bird just like how we want. So let's break these down one more time. Y speed starts at 0. And y speed is going to control whether we are moving up or down and how fast we're going. Fall speed is our gravity variable. It is actually going to slowly increase how far or how fast we're falling over time, but it is a small value. Jump height is going to jump our bird up, and it's going to do it in a big way at first, but eventually that jump height is jump height always stays negative 12. So we set y speed equal to jump height here. So y speed becomes negative 12. So that means that while it's a negative number, we're jumping up. But remember that fall speed is always being added to our y speed. So we go up, but once that y speed becomes a positive value, we start coming down. And then we also resized our sprite. So the step event is adding the positive value to our y speed all the time. The space bar is we actually set y speed to our jump height. We don't add it. Otherwise, if our y speed was at 10, because we were falling down pretty quick, and then we added our jump height to it, we would only go up a tiny, tiny bit. So if we try that, if we say y speed plus equals jump height, it's not going to work until we have a greater value than our negative, but you can see here that it doesn't really work the way we want. We don't want to add this to it. We want to set this value. We want to set y speed to our jump height. And that's everything that we've done so far. So We know how to find sprites, we know how to bring them into GameMaker, we've created an object, and we've simulated our own gravity and jumping system. All in all, a really good first day's work. So in the next video, we're going to learn about collisions, collision masks, and how to add events that deal with collisions in GameMaker. Because in our Flappy Bird game, we're going to eventually run into other things and objects, and we need to know how GameMaker handles that and exactly what to do when a collision occurs. But until then, keep making, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.